What is it you would be trying to do on climate change? What is it you would be trying to prevent if you were leading the United States at the conference?
Well, first of all, I think one of the dumbest statements I've ever heard in politics, in the history of politics as I know it, was Obama's statement that our number one problem is global warming, okay? When we have large groups of people that want to blow up every one of our cities, that want to destroy our country, that want to kill our people, and he's worried about global warming, I think it's one of the dumbest things I've ever seen.
Having 2 cars, 3 cars in your family and a television set in every room and living that sort of life that people live in developed countries and even in emerging economies now has a cost to it. The cost is climate change.
And the time is running out. Time is running out. We've got 10, most of the scientists say we have 10 years to reduce our emissions by 90%. We've got to keep 80% of the fossil fuels in the ground. That's a massive shift in our ways of life.
It is going to affect the way we do everything. It is going to affect the way we transport ourselves. It's going to affect what we eat, when we eat. It's going to affect how we heat, cool our homes. It's going to affect how we build our homes. It's going to affect certainly how we produce our food. It's going to affect practically every human endeavor.
If we failed in Paris, then the whole world is looking at a globally catastrophic situation, which will not spare anybody. It will hit the rich countries. New York will be affected, Berlin will be affected, London will be affected. It will affect everybody.
The average temperature on Earth has already risen by 1 degree Celsius. If we exceed 2 degrees Celsius of warming, most ecosystems will collapse. To prevent this, the United Nations has been trying to reach a global climate agreement since 1995. My film team and I are going to Paris to meet the people who are deciding about our future. At an airport shielded by the military, over 150 heads of state make their arrival. It's the largest diplomatic gathering in history, and it's called COP21.
Good morning.
Good to see you. We can solve this problem.
We nearly lost our permission to film due to tightening security after the terrorist attacks Paris had suffered some weeks before. But ultimately, the UN does allow us to be among the world's leaders with our camera crew. The negotiations open in the big red plenary hall.
Mesdames et messieurs, chers amis, j'ai le grand plaisir d'inviter la secrétaire exécutive, Madame Christiana Figueres, à prononcer son allocution. Madame la secrétaire exécutive, vous avez la parole.
Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, bonjour. Paris must be where the world unites as one. Paris must be where we show that we are capable of standing in solidarity with one another. Dear friends, never before has a responsibility so great been in the hands of so few.
Well, Paris is going to be my 21st COP. I've been to every single conference of parties, including this one, the 21st. Nowadays, I've become a Twitterer. Whenever I come somewhere, I tweet, let people know where I am, what I'm doing. In fact, I just crossed 6,000 followers. So this is the river of Bangladesh. The river is the main transport thoroughfare in Bangladesh. But sometimes they have floods and it can also be devastating. Can I just take this? Hi, John. So have you got a secret Paris text yet? I'll let you know. Well, John Vidal, who's he's the environment correspondent of the Guardian newspaper in London. And in Copenhagen, on the first day of the talks in Copenhagen, he got hold of a secret Copenhagen agreement that the Danish government had prepared and published it. And that's what caused all the suspicion from the developing countries. They said, how can they have a secret agreement? They didn't tell us. And we just started negotiating.
For 21 years, these people have failed to reach an agreement that would stop climate change. We meet with Christiana Figueres and ask her what world leaders have to do differently in Paris.
The climate change negotiation is the first time that humanity is having to answer the question, are we going to continue to work out of nation-state interests, governance, and decision boundaries? Or are we actually going to reach beyond nation-states into a global collaboration space?
On day one, the world leaders are gone. In their place, a crowd the size of a small town heads towards the conference center. "20,000 negotiators from all nations get to work on formulating the agreement's text. They're closely watched by 10,000 NGO observers and journalists. From the COP president, we want to know what the obstacles to a final agreement are.
La spécificité de cette conférence, c'est qu'il faut qu'il n'y ait pas un seul pays qui dise non. C'est là la difficulté extraordinaire. Quand je présente l'accord final, il faut que tout le monde dise oui. Même le plus petit pays, s'il dit non, ça s'arrête.
We're meeting Saleem, who is a well-established COP veteran. He's well-networked with the leading figures from the developing nations behind the scenes of the talks.
We like your mobile office, sir. Stuart from Reuters.
Hi, Stuart. How are you? Emily, how are you?
We always hear that Bangladesh is the most affected country. How does that look on the ground?
Well, Bangladesh has been known to be one of the most vulnerable countries for quite a few years now. By any measure that you might want to take, Bangladesh comes up in the first three countries of being vulnerable to floods, cyclones, even droughts on occasion. Inevitably and unfortunately, there will be millions of people, potentially more than 10 million people, who will no longer be able to continue living where they are in the coastal areas in particular.
Are you afraid of what the future of Bangladesh will look like if the deal isn't reached?
I'm afraid for the world. So I'm worried about how good an agreement, how ambitious an agreement are we going to have. And there's a very clear indicator between what we, and when I say we, I mean the vulnerable people and the vulnerable countries, see as good versus what we see as not good enough. If we agree a 2-degree target, which is what we have at the moment, we call that not good enough because it only protects the rich and the middle class living on the planet, and it doesn't protect the poorest. That's why we are so strong about the 1.5-degree goal. It's the right thing to do. It may be very difficult to do, but it's not impossible to do. And we want the leaders to do the right thing. LDC chair, come.
We're following Saleem to the LDCs, the group of least developed countries.
Bangladesh cannot solve the climate change problem, so Bangladesh has to have allies. The first group of allies are the least developed countries. There are nearly 50 of them. So they negotiate as a group. They try and get other groups on their side, like the other vulnerable countries, the African countries and the small island states. Whenever these three groups of countries come together and have a common position, then it's a very powerful position because they have the moral high ground. They are the countries that are going to suffer the impacts of climate change.
Please come in. Why are you scared of the LDCs? We don't bite. Huh?
I guess people were coordinating very well between as decent design, as Africa, as LDCs.
Yeah, very good.
So thank you so much.
Now you are
Said it enough.
proper negotiators, you know? You guys, negotiators, hard negotiators now.
My work with the least developed country group is for the junior negotiators, we do training, teaching them how to negotiate. For the senior negotiators, it's much more strategy development. I'm like a coach. I give them mentoring and support. They have to go and play the game. They are the players. I'm not a player.
Each day, the negotiations run until around midnight. At 7 o'clock each morning, the negotiating blocs have their coordination meetings. We're briefly allowed into the EU group, and we get hold of the delegates from Austria.
Mein Name ist Helmut Hojesky. Ich bin vom österreichischen Umweltministerium. Meine Rolle hier ist der Delegationsleiter der Beamtendelegation. Und zu Hause im Ministerium bin ich der Abteilungsleiter für Klimaschutz und Luftfeinhaltung im Umweltministerium. Das Ergebnis der Verhandlungen muss sein, einen sauberen Text ohne jegliche Square Brackets zu haben. Das sind Textteile, die umstritten sind, wo es also verschiedene Optionen gibt, wo eine Vertragspartei sagt, ich möchte hier Shell stehen haben, jemand anderer sagt Should, darauf sagt die andere wieder, ich möchte aber Shell. Also wir machen ein Square Bracket um dein Should herum und die anderen sagen, wir machen ein Square Bracket um dein Shell herum. Also so sind alle Optionen in einem Text drinnen. Also ein Text ist erst fertig, wenn er keine sogenannten Square Brackets hat. Also wenn alles ausgeräumt ist und da ist noch ein weiter Weg hin.
The developed countries do not like the word shall. Shall means the strongest obligation. They have to do it or they're supposed to do it. They prefer words like may, which gives them the option. They may or may not. They sometimes compromise with the word should. Should is less binding than shall. It is something that we urge countries to do, but countries may or may not do them. But even that is fairly weak legally binding agreement. A global agreement is not like national law. You don't have a police force that goes and enforces people who don't abide by the law. A global agreement is still voluntary even if they say shall.
Hello, everyone. Where are we? How are you doing? How are you? It's been ages. I have no doubt that we're going to reach an agreement here next year. Next week. Whoa! Next week. Okay. However, here's a concern that I hope that we all share. Is it going to be as transformative as we need? Because an agreement that only points toward gradual shifting of energy systems, of deforestation rates, of transportation, of everything else that contributes to climate change, only a gradual shift is not going to do it. Very good. Thank you. What is about the 2 degrees? 2 degrees.
But where's the below?
Under 2.
Where's the below?
Yeah, so you have to show me what you're saying.
Here.
Yeah, below. Minus 2 degrees. Below.
you go.
How do you do it? Below. So show
The other way?
Minus. How do you do it? Yeah, you have to point
No, here. This is the below. This is the
that
minus.
below? Oh, the okay.
The COP president has called for a meeting in the Red Plenary Hall. Access is restricted. From our insider Saleem, we hear that the Arab group has been attempting to sabotage the text the entire time.
Most countries are represented in the climate change negotiations by the ministries of environment. Saudi Arabia is represented by the Ministry of Petroleum. They have very good negotiators who are seconded to the Ministry of Petroleum to negotiate from Saudi Aramco. Saudi Aramco is the biggest oil-producing company in the whole world. They are the ones who send negotiators from Saudi Arabia.
I have the honor of speaking on behalf of the 22 Arab countries. Mr. President, we are working in a very delicate process. We want to be guided by the proven science. When we set a goal for our efforts as governments for this agreement, it has to be substantiated with proven science, and we will all work together to achieve the scientific goal and no other goal, Mr. President, be it political or any other goals that one might think of. Mr. President, we look forward to your guidance. The Arab group is ready to engage in good faith, and we will be here to support a very successful agreement. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. People who benefit from a system don't want to change the system. Rich countries have benefited from fossil fuels. Fossil fuel producing countries have benefited. They don't want change. They've just come out with a statement saying they want action, but that's a totally false statement. You see, they know how to play the game. They know how to say the right things, but then prevent actions from happening. And that's what one of the biggest problems that we have in the negotiations.
One of the things we fear is that we will go into the second week with too many options on too many issues for political...
From many negotiating groups, we're hearing skeptical voices warning that the negotiations are too complex and that the task to combine all demands in a single document is simply overwhelming. Will those opposed to the agreement ultimately end up winning?
My name is Ronny Jumeau. I'm Seychelles' roving ambassador or ambassador at large for climate change and small island developing state issues. And in the absence of my president and the ministers, I'm the head of delegation for the Seychelles delegation to COP21.
Where would you like to sit?
Islands cannot afford to wait for others. Time is a luxury we cannot afford because of the challenges we face. When the sea level rises, people think the islands will disappear, put them in a boat, put them in Australia, problem gone. No, the problem won't be gone. Because when the islands go under, every beach in the world, to a certain extent, more or less, is going to go under. It is not going to happen just as if it's happening on Mars. When you talk of islands, this is what you think of, right? It's a 4 or 5-star tourism resort. And this is what climate change is doing to it.
Sorry.
And in Seychelles, the biggest problem we're having now is coastal erosion. Short-term problem. Everywhere you go in Seychelles now, you see this. This is coastal erosion. The beach used to be over there. They've lost all that land. You can see the trees just collapsing into the ocean. Yeah. I will show you an island which will eventually disappear. This is one of the atolls we will lose to sea level rise. It'll go eventually.
In my youth, I actually did quite a bit of research and work in Samoa and fell in love with a beautiful island which had the most beautiful singing I have ever heard. And that contrasts quite remarkably with the Samoa that I saw last year. A Samoa that is still a beautiful island, but that is in serious threat. This is real human pain. I don't know
now people can disassociate themselves from this pain and just talk about it in a cold manner.
Night has fallen, and the COP venue is calm for the moment. Skepticism continues to grow, and the numbers make clear why. The current text still has 1,585 square brackets and issues to be resolved. There are 9 days left.
Hello, everybody. I hope you all did your sit-ups and your push-ups already, okay?
Hello. Hi,
Hey, how are you,
what
my
a
friend?
pleasure. It's a
Good
great
to see
pleasure.
you. Good to see you.
Great pleasure.
Yes.
I saw you on the bike.
Of
Yeah?
course.
Yes.
I ride the bike through Paris all the time. Exactly, yes.
Please, come in.
Yeah.
Die Kunst besteht darin, die Verhandlungen in kleinere Gruppen aufzuspalten. Die wirklichen Ergebnisse erzielt man dann in den sogenannten Informals. Da treffen sich dann wirklich nur Key Player, also entscheidende Vertreter von unterschiedlichen Positionen in einem kleinen Zimmer. Das sind dann vielleicht nur 10 Leute. Aber die können dann wirklich abgeschottet von den anderen zu einem Konsens kommen, der dann wieder in die großen Gruppen zurückgespielt wird. Also alles, was man im ganz kleinen Kreis entscheidet, muss letztendlich wieder durch diese gestaffelte Hierarchie zurück ins Plenum.
In the main plenary hall, everybody keeps talking about ambition. But especially in the case of Australia, such words can serve to disguise a negotiating team's actual motives.
Together, we have generated a text that holds within it the opportunity to conclude an ambitious and credible Paris Agreement that can establish a strategy to keep global temperature rise below 2 degrees. Let us be clear, we need ambition and clarity here and now. My name is Peter Woolcott, and I'm the Australian Ambassador for the Environment. We have a team of something like 30 negotiators here. And we are a major mining nation. We've always been a major exporter of coal. I think we're the second largest exporter of coal in the world. If we were to stop exporting coal in Australia, that would not make, in our view, any difference to the state of emissions in the world. It may even exacerbate them because Australian coal is high quality. And our Prime Minister has said, if we stopped exporting coal, it doesn't mean coal isn't going to be used. Coal is still used extensively particularly in our part of the world and in Africa. Still, coal remains the cheapest, in those parts of the world, the cheapest source of energy and power, and that means the fastest way towards economic development and growth for them. So coal is, again, it's a very complex issue. You can't be too simplistic about coal.
Up to now, hundreds of security officers have managed to successfully monitor the 2-kilometer wide area for threats. But suddenly, some of them start looking very nervous.
I'm even excited about this one. Ladies and gentlemen, first place fossil of the day, day 9, COP21 goes to Australia! Yes! Last night, Australia's Foreign Minister, Julie Bishop, spoke at a side event hosted by Indonesia, where she said coal will remain critical to promoting prosperity, growing economies, and alleviating hunger for years to come. You're welcome, poor people. Here you go, have some coal. Hand out some coal to these poor people. Yes, delicious coal. Yummy, delicious coal. Eat it, eat it, eat it. Eat that coal. Yet the Australian government still supports the construction of the largest coal mine in the Southern Hemisphere, right on the edge of the Great Barrier Reef. Yes. In Australia, we love big things.
Saleem tells us that behind closed doors, the small island states are fighting for the survival of their nations. There are about 30 countries that will cease to exist if we don't reach the 1.5-degree temperature target. The press and the public are barred from entering this meeting, but we managed to sneak into the secret talks with a hidden camera.
On 1.5, for small island states, holding the increase in temperature rise to below 1.5 degrees is a matter of survival. As it is for so many countries in this room. Mr. President, would it have been better for all of us, for future generations, to have text that expresses the urgency of actions to hold temperature rise to below 1.5 degrees? Absolutely.
We wish we can be as optimistic as our co-chairs who were heading the ambition group. I really think we need to have much more discussions with regard to Article 2, Paragraph 1A. I don't think we really do have consensus there. Or in Article 3.1, we are really far away from consensus, Mr. President, and I think we really need to have much more discussions.
We, small island developing states, we see it every day. Some of us, we are so small that we hear the wind blow from the east across to the west. Some of us are so small that when rain comes, we get frightened and we anticipate that danger could lie ahead for us. The day-to-day evidence of ordinary citizens that live in small island developing states cannot be denied. The fact is, sir, that we know because we watch our beaches disappear, we watch our homes washed away, we watch our dreams washed away, and we certainly do not want to watch our lives washed away.
The dramatic pleas of the island states are shocking to us. Within the next 10 to 20 years, the first of them will already have disappeared.
Ladies and gentlemen, I do want to give you a fresh picture of exactly what it is we're dealing with here. While we have been here, we have seen a repeat of the pattern of more floods and landslides. Indeed, today in Chennai, these events continue. This video was taken from just a few days ago, and the people of Tamil Nadu are suffering the consequences of this continuing downpour. Today, England has experienced the largest downpour in the entire history. Many people had to be rescued there. These events, may I reiterate, are taking place while we are here. Every day in the world, these events are occurring in places all around the earth. Super Typhoon Haiyan was the strongest ocean-based storm at its time to ever make landfall. And of course, our hearts went out to the people of Tacloban.
Haiyan that year was the 21st typhoon to hit Philippines. They got the warnings, they went to the shelters, They died in the shelters. The shelters collapsed. So Haiyan was not a normal typhoon. It was a super typhoon. Haiyan hit the Philippines the day before the Warsaw COP. And Sano, the chief Philippines negotiator, made a statement, a very emotional statement.
I see Philippines asking for the floor, so please.
The initial assessment showed that Haiyan left a wake of massive destruction that is unprecedented, unthinkable. Mr. President, I speak for my delegation, but I speak for the countless people who will no longer be able to speak for themselves. Now, Mr. President, if you will allow me, Super Typhoon Haiyan made landfall in my own family's hometown. And the devastation is staggering. I struggle to find words even for the images that we see on the news coverage. And I struggle to find words to describe how I feel about the losses. In solidarity with my countrymen who are struggling to find food back home, I will now commence a voluntary fasting for the climate. This means I will voluntarily refrain from eating food during this COP until a meaningful outcome is in sight. Mr. President, what my country is going through is madness. Mr. President, we can stop this madness right here in Warsaw.
Said he's going on a fast. He's going to not eat for the next 2 weeks. Many of us fasted with him. That's how we got the Warsaw International Mechanism in the COP. You know, for 19 years, the rich countries prevented us from talking about loss and damage. But we managed to get it done because we were united till the very end. We said we will not agree to anything in Warsaw. We go home, Warsaw is a failure, unless you give us this. And in the end, they blinked. They gave it to us. It's the only time we've got something out of them.
Outside the COP venue, we're lucky to run into Yeb Sanyo, the former lead negotiator of the Philippines at the COP in Warsaw.
After Warsaw, without me knowing the full reason behind it, I was taken out of the Philippine delegation. So it's not as if I walked away from the process. I was taken out. And if I was taken out because I have been vocal about rich nations having to take responsibility and about the fossil fuel industry being the biggest problem that stands in the way, that should give me a lot of pride to be taken out. Because climate change is a battle that will not be won or lost in the conference halls here.
As the powerful groups in the negotiations work to undermine the 1.5-degree goal of the poor and vulnerable countries, Saleem is fighting behind the scenes for his allies. In this, he has some influential backers.
I'm Saleemul. I'll be moderating the discussions. Nice to meet you, sir. Shall we start? Great. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm here in my capacity as the chair of the independent expert advisory group to the Climate Vulnerable Forum. It's now my pleasure to invite Christiana Figueres, the Executive Secretary of the UN Framework Convention. Christiana?
Thank you very much, my good friend Saleemul, and Honorable President Aquino, distinguished ministers. May I raise a voice of concern? I do not see the countries working in an articulated and coordinated fashion for this Paris Agreement. This is an urgent matter, but it is the countries around this table and many others outside that are going to determine whether we have an ambitious agreement or whether we just have an agreement. The danger is not to aim too high and fail. The danger is to aim too low and only do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christiana. It was agreed that all countries would now take action. And so the idea of the INDC, the intended nationally determined contributions, came up. And every country started developing their own. The problem with this voluntary action is that when you add it up, it's not enough. Collectively, it doesn't take us to 2 degrees, it takes us to maybe just under 3 degrees. And so if we want to go to 1.5 degrees, then we have to ramp it up. Every country has to do much more than they promised.
The national contributions don't even come close to saving us from environmental collapse. We now go to meet the leader of the EU bloc.
Wie wenn wir gewonnen hätten! Yay! Ich bin seit genau 2 Jahren Umweltministerin aus Luxemburg. Luxemburg hat gerade die Ratspräsidentschaft. Das heißt, ich bin die Stimme für Europa während dieser Konferenz. Ich bin mit 6 Jahren zum ersten Mal auf Demos gewesen gegen die Atomkraft. Das heißt, meine Familie war immer im Bereich Umwelt und Anti-Atomenergie aktiv. Und von daher habe ich mich für Politik interessiert und bin nach meinem Studium in Luxemburg, da ich was verändern wollte, in die Politik gegangen und habe jetzt das Glück, Sachen und Ideen, die mir vorschweben, umsetzen zu können.
Now, Your Excellency, the goal has to be durable. Making specific references, which we have on the table now, options for specific numbers, may not make it a durable agreement. Any goal that threatens our ability to eradicate poverty, any goal that threatens our ability to secure food is not going to be accepted. And there are one of the options, at least here, that option can be a threat to sustainable development, poverty eradication, and food production.
Mr. President, while the basis for an ambitious landing zone is still in this text, many options crossed our red lines. Some options have even been lost altogether. We must raise the level of ambition. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
I've always said the climate change negotiations stopped being about climate change a long time ago. It's about economy, it's about interests, it's about who pays for your election campaign. Fortunately, what we're seeing now is the business sector is ahead of the politicians. They're changing, they're turning around.
We pay a visit to COP Solutions, an exhibition where businesses tell us how they intend to take part in solving the climate crisis. Among them are the world's biggest banks and energy-producing corporations, which are also sponsoring the COP.
Ici, il y a par exemple une Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola a créé une usine en Inde et cette usine utilise près de 300 litres d'eau par jour. Cette usine, qui est située dans l'état de l'Uttar Pradesh, a été fermée par le gouvernement parce qu'elle prive les gens d'eau. Là-bas, là où on m'empêche d'aller, il y a des banques. Ces banques, c'est BNP Paribas. BNP Paribas est la 4e banque dans le monde en termes d'investissement dans le charbon. C'est inacceptable pour une banque qui prétend être responsable et qui prétend lutter contre les changements climatiques. Non, je ne souhaite pas avancer. Je ne souhaite pas avancer.
C'est ça le plus important.
This place is a corporate greenwashing exercise, and they're not allowing us to say so. These organisations have paid up to 250,000 euros to have not just a stand in here, but political influence. ENG and these companies, you're not part of the solution. And it seems the only way that you can make your voice heard when you haven't got 250,000 euros is to do something like this. Take direct action, make a noise, and actually make our voices heard. Money will not silence the people, and we will be heard.
Le problème, monsieur, c'est la justice climatique. Le problème, il est qu'ici, la liberté de parole, elle s'achète, monsieur. Les entreprises qui sont là, elles ont acheté leur possibilité de parler.
Unfortunately, money can buy you quite a lot of security. So we're going to be taken out, but it does not end here. We're going to continue, we're going to be in the streets, we're going to be on the front lines, we're going to take down ENG and the others. Whilst they are in our communities, I'm going to make sure that actually our climate future is in the hands of people and not big business.
From an insider, we receive information on how successful lobbying works. We learn, for example, that negotiators have given in to the aviation industry's demands and removed text that would have limited pollution from airplanes.
We are very pleased to see that within the last few days there's been a tremendous amount of momentum and support from civil society, from the world, and indeed from a number of countries, including developed and developing countries. And we hope that by the next few days we will complete an agreement that recognizes 1.5 degrees, but not only that, the means to achieve that. Do you have a microphone over there?
What kind of response are you seeing, particularly from oil-producing countries, to this goal of 1.5 degrees?
Thank you very much, Suzanne. I'm going to invite Wael Maidan to answer the question.
Yes, it's unfortunate that the Arab group is the mainly only group that is opposing 1.5, and this is surprising because part of the Arab region is supporting 1.5. Now, how much we'll be able to have a complete shift, and including Saudi Arabia accepting 1.5, it's going to be part of the trade-offs that could possibly happen.
Also ich lead negotiators und dann eine Rezeption vom französischen Minister.
Fabius, okay, yeah.
Carole, the leader of the EU group, tells us that she's forming a powerful coalition, including China, to pressure the countries opposing 1.5.
Dus je liest die wel op dabei, het zijn Inseln dabei, en we maken een statement einerseits, dat we met hen zusammen schaffen, dass wir den long-term target, das wir gemeinsam liegen, wo wir hin, dass für das die stimmen, die mehr ambitiös sind, dass wir mit denen gemeinsam kommunizieren.
Das kann ich annoncieren.
Das kannst du annoncieren.
Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to make an announcement that we're not here to accept the minimalist Paris Agreement. So every minister standing on this stage has joined the Ambition Coalition, and we will fight to protect the ambition in the agreement.
I have a question about the EU, who is part of this coalition but not present now. Can you explain why?
The President of the EU is here.
Yes. Yes, hello. It's for us normal to be on the Ambition Coalition because we need a long-term target. We need tools that can operationalize this target. So the EU is present from the beginning.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you very, very much for that. We will need to go now. Thank you very much.
What we are calling the High Ambition Coalition. This is a group of countries that is fully committed to ensuring that the agreement is a truly ambitious one. You know, this is not a situation where we have to hope and pray that some smart person is going to come along and find the solution. No, we already have the solution. The solution to climate change is energy policy. Sure, we're going to continue to pump gas and oil for years. We know that. We're not going to leave here knowing that everything we do is going to hit the 2-degree mark. But what we're doing is sending the marketplace an extraordinary signal that those 186 countries are really committed. And that helps the private sector to move capital into that, knowing there's a future that is committed to this sustainable path.
Emergency, and they tried to cancel demonstrations. But who wants to still take action? Who wants to still take disobedient action? So we're going to descend on those multinationals who are responsible for this crisis. Some noise.
No matter what the governments that call themselves ambitious claim, the actual promises, the actual targets that they have brought to this summit lead us to an extremely dangerous world. They don't lead us to 1.5 or 2 degrees Celsius. For setting a target of warming that may allow the low-lying Pacific Islands to survive, and I say may, our governments are demanding that those countries explicitly give up their right to seek loss and damages for climate change. It says it in the text right now.
The negotiators haven't slept for the past 2 days, with the talks continuing behind closed doors 24/7.
I'm hoping we preserve the high ambition elements, which are still in the text, in everything. But as they wheel and deal and compromise, there's a tendency to give up things. And right now, in the next few hours, I predict there'll be moves to jettison as much of it as possible, because that's how you get compromise. You get compromise by agreeing to the lowest common denominator, not by going to the upper end of the ambition. Then the bits that are easiest to sacrifice are the bits that the vulnerable and poorest countries hold dearest, but they're the ones who have least leverage in holding on to stuff. I'm very afraid that we will start losing all the ambitious language that's in the text now.
At 4 o'clock in the morning, the COP president calls an emergency meeting to resolve the conflict about the final wording of the agreement. The majority of countries demand 1.5 in the text, but a single veto can block this demand. This meeting is closed to the public, but we've managed to sneak inside.
Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, short speeches, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are of the view that it should read as follows. Hold the increase in the global average temperature to below 2 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels, full stop. And again, the word shall, would like to see may in that article. With that, Mr. President, I should thank you.
Well, Mr. President, we appreciate your leadership enormously. This agreement, I have to tell you, my friends, this is a monument to differentiation. This is the single most differentiated agreement I've ever seen in my life because of the 186 voluntary, nationally determined plans. And I hope we'll look very carefully and not get hung up over word for word that don't really have an impact. I mean, I'll give you an example. All parties should strive to formulate and communicate long-term low greenhouse gas emission development strategies. Now it's been recommended that that be deleted. I found it really hard to understand how the word strive threatens anybody. We can't afford, in the hours we have left and in the time we have, and given the spirit with which we've all come here, to nitpick every single word of this agreement. I don't believe that's where we are. Thank you, Mr. President.
My schedule is this one. Today, Friday, I will try to pull the pieces together, and I will consult the different groups during the day, not right now, but during the day. And I will be in a position to present a text, which will be the final text, tomorrow. Thank you very much.
In a desperate decision, the United Nations extends the negotiations by 1 day. Everybody's exhausted, and time's running out to reach the necessary agreement. The COP president makes a last attempt to bring the opposed sides together in secret talks.
Je n'ai pas de plan alternatif. Là, samedi, dans quelques heures, je vais proposer un texte. Mais si jamais les choses ne fonctionnent pas, je pense que c'est fini du multilatéralisme. J'invite maintenant la COP à adopter le projet de décision intitulé Accord de Paris qui figure dans le document. Je regarde la salle, je vois que la réaction est positive, je n'entends pas d'objection. L'accord de Paris pour le climat est accepté.
so I won't shut the account.
Well done, well done.
Thank you, Saleem. Thank you.
Well done.
Say LDC.
Professor.
Saleem.
Yep. I'm off.
Okay. Good.
Good. Well done. Well done. You should be proud.
Yes.
You should be proud.
I told
it was a
him
good
as
fight.
package.
Yeah.
It is good.
Just a good package.
What do you want more than that?
Exactly. Exactly.
And this is the core thing.
It's very good.
Yes.
It's a good agreement for us.
Yes, I think it is a good agreement. You did a lot for the LDCs and developing countries.
I did what I could. You did it yourself.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to help.
谢谢你们，非常感谢。下一个祝贺，祝贺，对。
这个我们大家一起努力，这个会成功。可能下一步啊要做的工作还非常多。
Yes. So let's start working tomorrow.
Today we had a historic agreement, 1.5 degree long-term goal, despite the fact that all the rich countries and all the big developing countries did not want it when they had come to Paris. We made them change their mind.
For the first time in history, 195 nations have settled on a global agreement. Its stated objective? To limit the increase in the global average temperature to well below 2 degrees Celsius and pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The Paris Agreement shall remain in effect for the coming decades. Its success depends on the national action plans of each and every country. But the new administration in the United States is strongly opposed to the UN's approach.
This agreement gives foreign bureaucrats control over how much our energy and how much we use right here in America. So foreign bureaucrats are going to be controlling what we're using and what we're doing on our land in our country. No way. We're going to cancel the Paris Climate Agreement and stop all payments of the United States tax dollars to UN global warming programs.
In order to reach the 1.5 degree target, worldwide emissions have to be drastically reduced by 2020.